At 2:17 p.m., March 24, 1945, First Lieutenant Thomas Kovacs, 24 years old, grips the control stick of his P-51D Mustang through leather gloves worn thin by 41 combat missions. The nickname Pittsburgh Steel is painted in bold white letters beneath his canopy, a reminder of home, of the immigrant neighborhood on Pittsburgh's south side, of his father who worked the blast furnaces and prayed his son would never have to. The sky above Schweinfurt, Germany is deceptively peaceful. A canvas of pale blue stretches to infinity, marked only by the distant contrails of B-17 bombers returning from their raid on ball-bearing factories deep in the Third Reich. 60 miles east of Frankfurt, at 24,000 feet, the temperature outside Kovacs' canopy reads -38 degrees Fahrenheit. The Packard Merlin engine hums with mechanical precision, a symphony of 1,490 horses pushing him through thin air at 280 miles per hour. Kovacs scans the horizon with eyes that have learned to see death before it arrives. Fighter pilots in the European theater face brutal mathematics: 30% killed in action, 20% shot down over enemy territory, only 50% making it home alive. For 14 months, Kovacs has beaten those odds. 41 missions. 41 times he's climbed into this cockpit not knowing if he'd climb out again. His squadron, the 352nd Fighter Group, flies high cover, 2,000 feet above the lumbering bombers. Each B-17 carries 10 men, 6 bombers in the formation below. 60 souls depending on fighters like Pittsburgh Steel to keep the wolves away. Then his radio crackles with the words every pilot dreads: bandit, bandit, bandit. 7 o'clock high, multiple contacts. Kovacs' head snaps left and upward. There, painted against cottony clouds, 5 Focke-Wulf FW-190s dive toward the bomber formation like hawks, spotting wounded prey. The angular German fighters are closing at over 400 miles per hour, their BMW radial engines screaming their lethal intent. Each FWI-190 carries 420mm cannons and 213mm machine guns, enough firepower to shred a B-17 in seconds. Standard doctrine is crystal clear: never engage when outnumbered, call for support, maintain altitude advantage, protect the bombers from a defensive position. The training manuals at Tuskegee, the briefings in England, every combat veteran he's ever spoken to, they all say the same thing: don't be a hero. Heroes get their squadrons killed. Kovacs looks down at the bombers. Through his canopy he can see them clearly. Massive, vulnerable, slow. He knows what happens when FWI-90s reach a bomber formation. The 20mm cannons tear through aluminum skin like paper. Fuel tanks explode. Wings separate from fuselage. Men burn alive or fall 24,000 feet, their screams lost in the wind. The nearest friendly fighters are 8 miles south, escorting another formation. By the time they arrive, the German fighters will have made their attack runs. 60 men will be dead or dying, spiraling toward Earth in flaming coffins of twisted metal. The mathematics are simple: 5 enemy fighters versus 1 American. Impossible odds. But Thomas Kovacs isn't thinking about mathematics. He's thinking about his bombardier friend, Danny Cohen, who bought him a beer last week and showed him pictures of his newborn daughter. Danny's flying in the lead bomber. He's thinking about the kid from Iowa, couldn't have been more than 19, who asked Kovacs for advice before his first mission yesterday. That kid is in one of those B-17s right now, probably terrified, definitely praying. He's thinking about his father, Josef Kovacs, who escaped Hungary in 1920 with nothing but the clothes on his back and the belief that America meant something. His father worked 16-hour shifts in steel mills so hot they melted men's boots, all so his son could have a different life. A better life. Szabadság, his father would say, the Hungarian word for freedom. We came here for szabadság. Never forget what that cost. 3 seconds. That's how long Kovacs has to make his decision. His training says run. His orders say wait for support. Every instinct for self-preservation says this is suicide. But 60 men are about to die unless someone does something. Thomas Kovacs makes his choice. He rolls Pittsburgh steel inverted, pulls the stick back hard, and dives straight toward 5 enemy fighters. The G-forces slam him into his seat like a giant's fist. His vision tunnels. Blood rushes to his head. The altimeter spins counterclockwise, 25,000 feet, 24,000, 23,000. His airspeed indicator climbs past 400 miles per hour. The control stick grows heavy as velocity builds. Wind screams past his canopy like banshees. Every rivet in the airframe shudders. The German fighters haven't seen him yet. They're fixated on the bombers, already lining up their attack vectors. Kovacs counts them again. 5 confirmed targets. His P-51 carries 651. Caliber Browning machine guns with 1,880 rounds of ammunition total. In combat, that translates to roughly 15 seconds of continuous fire. 15 seconds to kill 5 fighters. After that, he's defenseless, a target, not a threat. At 22,000 feet, Kovacs levels out 800 yards behind the German formation. His gun sight, an illuminated orange circle, hovers over the trailing FW-190. The German pilot has no idea death is approaching from behind. He's young, probably, fresh-faced, maybe thinking about a girl back home, maybe thinking about his own survival statistics. Range, 700 yards. Too far. 600 yards. Still too far. 500 yards. Almost. At 400 yards, Kovacs's finger finds the trigger. Time seems to slow, the way it always does in combat. He can see individual panels on the Fudancy fuselage. He can see the German crosses on the wings. He can see the pilot's head in the cockpit. He squeezes. 6 streams of 5.0 caliber tracers converge on the German fighter. Each bullet weighs less than 2 ounces but travels at 2,900 feet per second. The FW-190's fuselage erupts in a cascade of sparks and torn aluminum. Pieces of metal skin peel away like leaves in a hurricane. The right wing root explodes in orange flame, fuel igniting, hydraulics bursting. The German pilot doesn't even have time to scream. His fighter rolls inverted and spins toward Earth, trailing black smoke like a death shroud. 1 down. 4 to go. Now they know he's here. The formation shatters. 2 5-190s brake hard left, 2 brake right. It's a standard scissor maneuver. Split the attacker's focus, loop around, catch him in a crossfire from opposite directions. Kovacs has perhaps 20 seconds before those fighters complete their turns and bring their superior numbers to bear. He has to keep killing before they can coordinate. He selects his next target. The far right FW-190, now pulling up into a climbing turn. The German pilot is good. He's trying to use his BMW 801 engine's superior horsepower to outclimb the Mustang. In a straight vertical climb, the 5190 has the advantage. More power, better rate of climb. But Kovacs doesn't climb straight. He pulls into a climbing spiral, corkscrewing upward like a rifle bullet. The Mustang's superior roll rate gives him the edge here. He's bleeding airspeed, 260, 240, 220. But maintaining energy. The German pilot doesn't see the trap until it's too late. At 23,000 feet, physics catches up with the 5190. The nose drops, the fighter stalls, hanging motionless in the air for 3 eternal seconds. A sitting duck. Kovacs fires. Range, 200 yards, point blank in aerial combat. His 5.0 caliber rounds tear through the 5190's cockpit like a circular saw through plywood. The canopy explodes in a shower of plexiglass. The German pilot's body jerks violently, once, twice, then goes still. The WSOD-190 tumbles sideways, spiraling toward Earth. No parachute. The pilot is already dead. 2 down. 3 to go. But now Kovacs is in trouble. His airspeed reads 180 miles per hour, dangerously slow, wallowing at the edge of a stall. He pushes the stick forward, diving to rebuild velocity. Behind him, he hears the sound that every fighter pilot dreads, the ripping canvas noise of cannon fire. The 2 590s that broke left have completed their turn. They're on his tail now, 600 yards back and closing fast. Tracer fire stitches the air past his right wing. Glowing rounds curve past his canopy, each bullet traveling 2,800 feet per second. If one hits his engine, he's dead. If one hits his fuel tanks, he's a fireball. If one hits him, his wife Elizabeth, who he married before shipping overseas, who writes him letters every week, who's waiting in Pittsburgh, becomes a widow. Kovacs brakes hard left, pulling 6 Gs. The world tilts 90 degrees. His vision grays at the edges as blood drains from his brain toward his feet. He tightens his stomach muscles, grunting against the pressure, fighting to stay conscious. The horizon becomes a vertical line. More tracers. Closer this time. He can feel the heat of them passing. He reverses his turn, braking hard right. The sudden direction change throws off the German gunner's aim. He rolls inverted and pulls down, diving beneath their line of fire. His airspeed builds 320, 340, 360 miles per hour. The altimeter unwinds rapidly. 21,000 feet, 20,000, 19,000. At 18,500 feet, he levels out and looks back. The 250-190s are still there, following him down. But they've separated, one high, one low, classic hunter-killer formation. One flushes the prey, the other makes the kill. And the third German fighter, the one Kovacs hasn't seen yet, is the most dangerous. The fighter you can't see is the fighter that kills you. His radio crackles again. Steel lead, Falcon 3, we see your engagement. Friendly fighters inbound, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. In aerial combat, 4 minutes is an eternity. Kovacs makes another decision that defies every rule of survival. He can't outrun 3 fighters. He can't outclimb them. His only advantage is maneuverability at high speed and the element of surprise. So he does what no sane pilot would do when outnumbered 3-1. He turns back into them. The FW-190, diving from above, opens fire first. 20mm cannon shells arc towards Pittsburgh steel. Each shell weighs 4 ounces and carries enough explosive to blow a man apart. 1 hit can tear off a wing. 2 hits can cut an aircraft in half. Kovacs sees the muzzle flashes, bright yellow stars against the blue sky, and reacts on pure instinct. He pulls hard left, then immediately reverses right. It's called a scissors maneuver, and it's a desperate gamble. The German gunner tracks him, leading the target, anticipating the turn. But Kovacs's reversal is so abrupt, so violent, that the cannon shells pass harmlessly behind Pittsburgh Steel's tail. But the maneuver costs him. His airspeed drops to 280 miles per hour. The second FW-190, the one approaching level, is closing the gap. Range, 500 yards and decreasing. Kovacs checks his ammunition counter. He's fired 340 rounds, almost a quarter of his total load. He has 540 rounds remaining, less than 13 seconds of fire. Every burst must count. Every bullet must matter. The German pilot level with him opens fire. Tracers converge on Pittsburgh steel like guided lightning. Kovacs feels 3 impacts, sharp metallic bangs that shudder through the airframe. The sound is terrifying, personal, intimate. It's the sound of death trying to reach him. He glances at his instruments, his heart hammering. Oil pressure, normal. Coolant temperature, normal. No warning lights. Whatever got hit wasn't critical. Yet, he pulls into a climbing turn, trying to regain altitude and energy. The 2 visible 590s follow, but they're more cautious now. They've watched 2 of their squadron mates die in less than 3 minutes. They know this American pilot isn't easy prey. They're setting up for a coordinated attack. 1 high, 1 low, both firing simultaneously from opposite angles. No escape. No defense. And somewhere in the sky above, that third German fighter is positioning for the kill shot. Kovacs's mouth is dry. His hands ache from gripping the stick. His neck throbs from constantly twisting to check his 6. The oxygen mask tastes like rubber and fear. He thinks about his father again. Josef Kovacs survived 2 wars, a revolution, and an ocean crossing to build a life in America. He survived because he was smart, resourceful, and refused to give up when the odds were impossible. Soha neat fel, his father would say, never give up. Thomas Kovacs has no intention of giving up. If you want to see how Thomas Kovacs survives against 3 enemy fighters with no support and limited ammunition, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Kovacs. At 2:22 p.m., Kovacs spots the third FW-100. It's 2,000 feet above him, diving from the sun. Classic attack position. The German pilot has been patient, professional, waiting for Kovacs to focus on the other 2 fighters. Now he's coming in for the kill, and Kovacs is perfectly positioned. Distracted, low on energy, vulnerable. This is how most pilots die. Fixated on the threat in front, killed by the threat behind. But Thomas Kovacs has survived 41 missions by never doing what's expected. Instead of breaking away, he does something counterintuitive, something insane. He throttles back. His airspeed drops from 280 to 240 miles per hour. The Mustang shudders, approaching stall speed. The aircraft feels mushy, unresponsive, on the edge of falling out of the sky. The diving FW-190, traveling at over 400 miles per hour, commits to his attack run. He's locked in, his gun sight centered on where he expects the Mustang to be. But Kovacs isn't there. The German fighter overshoots, flashing past Kovacs's nose at closing speed of over 600 miles per hour. For 2 precious seconds, the FW-190 fills Kovacs's gun sight, belly exposed, pilot visible, no chance to evade. Kovacs fires, a 3-second burst. 180 rounds. The .50 caliber bullets walk up the FW-190's fuselage from tail to cockpit like a zipper of destruction. Metal tears. Fuel ignites. The German's right wing separates at the root, tumbling away in a spiral of debris. The fighter cartwheels through the sky, shedding parts, a wheel, a panel, a door. No parachute deploys. The pilot is either dead or unconscious, riding his disintegrating aircraft toward Earth. 3 down. 2 to go. But Kovacs's airspeed is now 220 miles per hour, stall speed for a P-51 at this altitude with combat load. The aircraft wallows, barely flying. The 2 remaining 5090s sense weakness like sharks sensing blood in water. They attack simultaneously from opposite sides, a hammer and anvil maneuver designed to guarantee at least 1 kill. Kovacs has one option left: dive. He pushes the stick forward and drops the nose. Pittsburgh steel falls like a stone. The airspeed needle climbs. 250, 280, 320, 360. The WY-90s follow, but they're cautious now. They've watched 3 of their comrades die in less than 4 minutes. They know this American pilot is dangerous, unpredictable, lethal. At 16,000 feet, Kovacs levels out and checks his 6. Both German fighters are still there, 800 yards back, matching his altitude. They're waiting. They know he's low on ammunition. They know reinforcements won't arrive for 3 more minutes. They can afford to be patient. But patience in combat can be a fatal mistake. Kovacs spots salvation, a thick bank of cumulus clouds at 14,000 feet, running north to south for miles. If he can reach those clouds, he can break visual contact. In the clouds, their numerical advantage disappears. It becomes a game of cat and mouse, and Kovacs has proven he's a very dangerous mouse. He pushes his throttle to maximum power. War emergency setting. The Packard Merlin engine screams, delivering every available horsepower. His airspeed climbs to 380 miles per hour. The aircraft shakes with the strain. The 2 490s accelerate to match. They're closing the gap. 700 yards, 650, 600. If they get within 400 yards, they'll open fire. Concentrated fire from 2 fighters is unsurvivable. The clouds are 30 seconds away. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Tracer fire erupts from the left side FW-199. The German is firing at maximum range, hoping for a lucky hit. Most of the cannon shells pass overhead, but one connects. It punches through Kovacs's left wing with a metallic crack that he feels through the control stick. Fuel begins streaming from the punctured wing tank. Kovacs's eyes snap to his fuel gauge. He started the mission with 180 gallons. He's burned 95 gallons in combat maneuvering. The gauge reads 65 gallons, and it's dropping fast. Fuel sprays from the damaged wing, evaporating in the 3800 mile per hour slipstream. He's losing 5 gallons per minute. At 5 gallons per minute, he has 13 minutes of flying time. The nearest friendly airfield is 40 miles southwest, 15 minutes at cruise speed. The mathematics are simple and brutal. He won't make it home. But first, he has to survive the next 2 minutes. Kovacs reaches the cloud bank at 2:24 p.m. He plunges into white moisture, and the world disappears. Visibility drops to 0. He's flying blind now, on instruments only. Artificial horizon, airspeed indicator, altimeter, compass. The numbers glow green in the dimness. The W-190s follow him into the clouds, but they've lost visual contact. They're hunting blind, searching for a ghost. Kovacs pulls a hard left turn inside the clouds, then immediately rolls right and dives. He drops 2,000 feet in 15 seconds, then levels out and turns south. The German fighters are somewhere above him, searching the clouds, probably splitting up to cover more area. If they're smart, and they've proven they're smart, they'll spread out and patrol the cloud exits. If Kovacs emerges in the wrong place, they'll be waiting. His fuel gauge reads 58 gallons, 11 minutes remaining. The cloud bank is 3 miles wide. Kovacs flies through white nothingness for 90 seconds, his world reduced to glowing instruments and the steady hum of his engine. Then he breaks into clear air. He scans the sky frantically. No enemy fighters visible. Either they're still in the clouds, or they're patrolling another exit, or they've given up and headed home. His radio crackles. Steel-lead Falcon 3, we have you visual. 2 bandits at your 4 o'clock high 2 miles. We're engaging. Kovacs looks right and up. 4 P-51s dive toward the 2 remaining few W-190s. The Germans see the new threat and break off immediately, turning east toward Germany. The fight is over. Thomas Kovacs is alone in the sky with a dying aircraft. At 2:26 p.m., reality sets in. Fuel gauge 52 gallons, 10 minutes of flying time, nearest friendly airfield, Florens, Belgium, 43 miles southwest. At his current airspeed of 280 miles per hour, that's a 9-minute flight. He might make it. Kovacs reduces throttle to conserve fuel. His airspeed drops to 240 miles per hour. The fuel streaming from his damaged wing slows to a trickle. The gauge stabilizes at 50 gallons. He recalculates. At reduced speed, Florens is 11 minutes away. He won't make it. Kovacs keys his radio. His voice is steady, professional, betraying none of the fear churning in his gut. Falcon 3, steel-lead. I'm hit and losing fuel. Estimate 7 minutes flying time remaining. Request emergency landing clearance at nearest field. Roger, steel-lead. Florens is notified. Emergency crews standing by. Can you make it? Kovacs checks his fuel gauge again. 46 gallons. He does the math one more time, hoping the numbers will change. They don't. Negative. I'll be dry before I reach the field. I'm going to put her down in friendly territory. There's a pause on the radio. Then, copy that, steel-lead. Good luck. Below him, the German countryside gives way to the forests of eastern Belgium. Kovacs scans for suitable landing sites. Farm fields are too small, bordered by stone walls and trees. Roads are too narrow, lined with telephone poles. He needs flat, open ground at least 1,000 feet long, and he needs it soon. At 2:29 p.m., he spots a possibility. A harvested wheat field, maybe 1,200 feet long. It's rough, rutted, bordered by dense forest, but it's his only option. He turns toward it, descending through 12,000 feet. His fuel gauge reads 38 gallons. The engine runs smooth, but that can change in a heartbeat. When the fuel runs dry, the Packard Merlin will quit. No restart. No second chance. No glide long enough to find another field. Kovacs circles the field once, checking for obstacles. The ground is rough but clear of major debris. No power lines, no fence posts, no livestock. Wind is from the west at approximately 10 miles per hour. He'll land into the wind, using every advantage he can find. At 8,000 feet, his engine coughs. The sound is terrifying, a brief interruption in the steady mechanical rhythm, a warning that death is approaching. The fuel gauge reads 22 gallons, but that number is unreliable now. The damaged fuel line is probably feeding air bubbles into the system. When enough air reaches the engine, it will stop. Kovacs lowers his landing gear. 3 green lights confirm all wheels are down and locked, a small miracle given the battle damage. He extends his flaps to landing position. The Mustang slows to 160 miles per hour. He lines up with the wheat field, now 4,000 feet below. At 3,000 feet, the engine coughs again. RPM drops from 2,200 to 1,800. Kovacs works the throttle gently, coaxing more power. The engine responds, but weakly, reluctantly. He's descending at 1,200 feet per minute, twice the normal rate. The ground rushes up at him. At 1,500 feet, the engine quits, complete silence except for wind noise. The sudden absence of sound is shocking, unnatural. The propeller windmills in the slipstream, creating drag. Kovacs is gliding now, trading altitude for distance. He has 1,500 feet of altitude and needs to travel half a mile to reach the field. The glide ratio of a P-51 with dead engine and extended landing gear is approximately 6.2. He can glide 9,000 feet from current altitude. The mathematics work. He'll make the field. But landing a dead-stick fighter in a rough field is vastly different from landing on a smooth runway. If his landing gear catches a rut, the aircraft will cartwheel and he'll be crushed or burned alive. If he touches down too fast, he'll overshoot into the trees. If he touches down too slow, he'll stall and pancake into the ground. At 500 feet, Kovacs is lined up perfectly. The wheat field fills his windscreen. Airspeed reads 120 miles per hour, 20 above stall speed. He's committed. No go-around, no second approach. This is it. At 100 feet, he pulls back gently on the stick, flaring for landing. The nose rises. Airspeed bleeds off. 115, 110, 105. The ground rushes up, filling his vision. Pittsburgh Steel's main wheels touch down at 2:31 p.m. The impact is brutal, harder than any landing Kovacs has ever made. The gear struts compress fully, bottoming out. He's thrown forward against his harness, the straps cutting into his shoulders. The aircraft bounces 10 feet back into the air. Kovacs pushes the stick forward, forcing the wheels back to earth. They hit again, this time staying down. The tail wheel slams into the rough ground. Without engine power, he has no hydraulic pressure for brakes. Pittsburgh Steel rolls forward, slowing gradually on the uneven surface. Ahead, the tree line approaches. 400 feet remaining. His airspeed is 60 miles per hour. Kovacs stands on the rudder pedals, activating the mechanical backup brakes. The wheels lock. The Mustang skids forward through wheat stubble, dirt spraying. 300 feet to the trees. Airspeed, 45 miles per hour. 200 feet. Airspeed, 30 miles per hour. 100 feet. Airspeed, 20 miles per hour. Pittsburgh Steel comes to rest 70 feet from the tree line. Thomas Kovacs sits in the cockpit for 10 seconds, listening to the cooling engine tick and ping. His hands are shaking. His flight suit is soaked with sweat despite the freezing altitude he descended from. His heart hammers against his ribs. He's alive. He unbuckles his harness with trembling fingers, opens the canopy, and climbs down from the wing. His legs nearly buckle when his boots hit Belgian soil. He has to grab the wing to steady himself. Belgian farmers are running toward him from a nearby farmhouse, waving and shouting. Kovacs looks back at his aircraft. The left wing is torn and leaking the last of its fuel. The fuselage shows 320mm cannon hits, any one of which could have killed him. The tail section has 14 13mm machine gun holes. Pittsburgh Steel flew her last mission. But she brought him home. The aftermath moves quickly. Within 30 minutes, an American jeep arrives from Florence airfield. 2 military police sergeants and a medical corpsman check Kovacs for injuries. He's bruised from the hard landing, exhausted from combat stress, but uninjured. The corpsman gives him water and a chocolate D ration bar that tastes like the finest meal he's ever eaten. A maintenance crew arrives 2 hours later to assess Pittsburgh Steel. The crew chief, Master Sergeant Donald Pritchard, walks around the aircraft slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Sir, I've seen aircraft with less damage than this declared total losses. You flew this thing how far after taking damage?" 43 miles, Kovacs replies quietly, most of it leaking fuel. Pritchard runs his hand along the cannon damage on the wing. "These 20 holes are 6 inches from your main fuel tank. Another inch to the right, and you'd have exploded in mid-air." He looks at Kovacs with something approaching awe. "You're the luckiest man in Belgium, Lieutenant." Kovacs doesn't feel lucky. He feels tired. He feels grateful. He feels the weight of what he's done and what it cost, not to him, but to the 4 German pilots who died in those minutes of violence above Schweinfurt. The Army Air Force investigators arrive the next day. Kovacs spends 4 hours in a dusty office, answering questions while a stenographer records everything. How many enemy aircraft engaged? 5 FW-190s. What were their positions? Initial attack formation, then dispersed. How much ammunition did you expend? Approximately 700 rounds. What evasive maneuvers did you perform? Scissors, vertical spirals, high-speed dives, clouds for concealment. Why did you engage when outnumbered 5-1? Kovacs pauses at this question. He looks at the investigator, a major who's never flown combat, who's asking questions from a comfortable office while men are dying every day in the sky above Europe. "Because 60 American airmen were about to die if I didn't," Kovacs says simply. "That's what we do. We protect the bombers. That's the job." The investigators review Pittsburgh Steel's gun camera footage. The film is grainy, black and white, but it tells the story. 4 FW-190 kills confirmed, 1 from the initial attack, 3 from the subsequent dogfight. The 2 5-190s that escaped don't count as kills. Army Air Force regulations require visual confirmation or gun camera evidence of aircraft destruction. 4 confirmed kills in a single engagement while outnumbered 5-1. It's the kind of combat action that earns medals and makes reputations. On March 27, 1945, 3 days after the engagement, Thomas Kovacs is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. The ceremony takes place at Florence Airfield. Brigadier General Marcus Thompson pins the medal on Kovacs's chest in front of the assembled squadron. Thompson's voice carries across the assembled men. First Lieutenant Kovacs distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism while serving as pilot of a P-51 fighter aircraft. Upon observing 5 enemy fighters attacking a friendly bomber formation, Lieutenant Kovacs single-handedly engaged the enemy force, destroying 4 enemy aircraft and driving off the remainder, thereby protecting 60 American airmen from certain destruction. After the ceremony, Thompson pulls Kovacs aside. His voice is quieter now, more personal. "You did something extraordinarily brave and extraordinarily foolish, Lieutenant. Those bombers came home because of you. 60 men are alive because you made an impossible choice. But don't do it again. We need pilots who can make those choices and live to make them again." Kovacs nods. "Yes, sir. Once was enough." Pittsburgh Steel is salvaged for parts. The airframe is too damaged for repair. But the Packard Merlin engine is removed and installed in another P-51. The guns are cleaned and remounted in other aircraft. The aluminum skin is melted down and reformed. Within weeks, Pittsburgh Steel exists only in photographs, official reports, and in the memory of one pilot who flew her into impossible odds and somehow survived. Thomas Kovacs returns to combat operations on April 2, 1945. He flies 9 more missions before Germany surrenders on May 8, 1945. His final tally: 50 combat missions, 6 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed, 0 losses. The 4 German pilots Kovacs shot down on March 24, 1945, are never identified. Luftwaffe records from that period are incomplete, destroyed during the final collapse of the Third Reich. But somewhere in Germany, 4 families received telegrams in the spring of 1945, brief, impersonal notifications that their sons, husbands, or fathers were killed in action over Belgium. The telegrams didn't mention that they died fighting one American pilot who refused to let them pass. They didn't mention the bomber crews that survived because of impossible courage. They didn't mention names or circumstances, only that they died serving their country. War creates enemies out of people who might have been friends. Thomas Kovacs musters out of the Army Air Forces on November 12, 1945, with the rank of captain. He returns to Pittsburgh, to the neighborhood where he grew up, to the steel mills where his father still works. He uses the GI Bill to enroll at Carnegie Institute of Technology, studying mechanical engineering. He graduates in 1949 with honors. He marries Elizabeth Romano in 1950, the girl who wrote him letters every week during the war, who waited for him, who never doubted he'd come home. They have 3 children, Michael in 1951, Susan in 1953, Robert in 1956. Kovacs works for Westinghouse Electric Corporation for 32 years, designing turbine engines. His colleagues know he served in the war, but they don't know the details. The Distinguished Flying Cross hangs in a closet, not on a wall. He doesn't talk about March 24, 1945. He doesn't talk about the 4 men he killed or the 60 he saved. When his children ask about the war, he tells them it was a long time ago and changes the subject. But every March 24th, he goes quiet. Elizabeth knows why. His children eventually figure it out. On those days, Thomas Kovacs is somewhere else, 24,000 feet above Schweinfurt, making an impossible choice, fighting 5 enemy fighters alone. He maintains contact with his squadron. Every 2 years, the survivors gather for reunions. The group grows smaller each year. They drink beer, tell old stories, remember friends who didn't come home. They never talk about Kovacs's mission over Schweinfurt, but they all know. It's in the records, in the history books, in the legend of the 352nd Fighter Group. Elizabeth dies in 2003 after 53 years of marriage. Kovacs moves in with his daughter Susan. His health declines gradually. Heart trouble, arthritis, the accumulated weight of 83 years. On June 14, 2004, Thomas Kovacs dies peacefully in his sleep. He's 83 years old. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette mentions his military service in one sentence. Thomas served in the Army Air Forces during World War II and was decorated for valor. At his funeral, more than 300 people attend. Family, friends, colleagues, and a dozen elderly men in Air Force uniforms who traveled from across the country. They're the survivors of the 352nd Fighter Group, men who flew beside him, who knew what March 24, 1945 truly meant. One of them, retired Colonel Danny Cohen, the bombardier whose daughter's picture Kovacs saw before that mission, speaks at the service. His voice cracks with emotion. Tom saved my life that day. He saved 60 lives. We all knew the odds. We all knew what he risked. He didn't have to do it. But that's who Tom Kovacs was, a man who saw people in danger and couldn't look away. Cohen pauses, wiping his eyes. We went home to our families because one pilot decided 60 lives mattered more than impossible odds. That's not just bravery. That's love for your fellow man. Thomas Kovacs is buried at Allegheny Cemetery in Pittsburgh, not far from the steel mills where his father worked. His headstone is simple. Name, rank, dates in one line, Distinguished Flying Cross, World War II. It doesn't mention the 4 enemy fighters. It doesn't mention the 5-to-1 odds. It doesn't mention that for 4 minutes above Schweinfurt, Germany, one American pilot held the line against impossible mathematics and won. But the 60 men who came home that day, and their children, and their grandchildren, they know. Sometimes one person, facing impossible odds, refusing to back down, can change everything. Thomas Kovacs proved that on March 24, 1945, and 60 families lived because he did.